Boy, this is Olua Fakola Day of Indian Karifa Temple. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody? Tap in, tap in, tap in, tap in, tap in. Good morning, good morning. How's everyone today? This is Olua Fakola Day. Let's begin with our morning prayers. I share. Mojuba Oloro, Mojuba Leta. Mojuba Oloro Mare, Mojuba Bobo Rumale, Mojuba Bobo Imale, Mojuba Boegun, Tembili Soloro Mare. Mojuba Shungwede, Mojuba Gwede, Mojuba Froganamus, Mojuba Tom, Mojuba Flori, Mojuba Plau Corriente. Mojuba Felipe Zalowetu, Mojuba Gunjobi, Mojuba Miye, Mojuba Shamula, Mojuba Shalanko, Mojuba Tonade, Mojuba Shubi, Mojuba Sejmanada from the first. I won't baba at room. That your bed. He who hears people's pleas and sets the pleas. He who hears people's pleas and approves the pleas. He talks to people and ensures that the talk is completely absorbed. He who hears people's pleas and sets the pleas in the name of V5. He who hears people's pleas and approves the pleas in the name of Eshuadara. He talks to people and ensures that the talk is completely absorbed in the name of Oishana. Oishana. The person also means the person was one cannot fail to impress one. The strike frogs when summer's rainfall. The bullfrogs on summer's downpour. It is whatever that the Reggie poem to you tells Earth worth it accepts. Whatever the big rat tells Earth worth it accepts. All what I tell you, five please accept and improve them. I share. Autorete, to show gratitude upon gratitude is the our gratitude. To display benevolence upon benevolence is the our benevolence. Whoever says on gratitude for yesterday's benevolence, such a person now receives their gratuity. These were the decoration five to the front room when we're going to marry your boy. Daughter of Buji. These are the decoration five to the room. I'm going to marry your boy. Daughter of Buji. I'm grateful. I see my gratuity. I'm grateful yesterday's favor. I'll receive today's gratuity. Oh, Torete, we're very grateful. I share. Awa dupe, awa bure, awa dupe, oh, awa bure. Adúpẹ́ àná òbúre kùnẹ́ Olódùmarè àwa dúpẹ́ àwa búre àwa dúpẹ́ àwa búre adúpẹ́ àná òbúre kùnẹ́ orí ẹni àwa dúpẹ́ àwa búre. Àwa dúpẹ́ àwa búre, adúpẹ́ àná àbúrò ẹ̀rù ìrúmọ̀lẹ̀. Àwa dúpẹ́ àwa búre, àwa dúpẹ́ àwa búre, adúpẹ́ àná àbúrò tùnẹ́bọ̀ lẹ́gùn lọ́rìṣà. We ask for your forgiveness in the name of your roasted. Counted young without something very difficult to entomb. These were the decorations we followed to a tutu. The child of Agbenereko. He was full of bad character. He was bad attitude that prevented him from entering T5's domain. Now it comes to solicit on behalf of Tutu. We've come to beg on behalf of Tutu. Father, please be patient, overlook this provocation. Those who beg on behalf of Tutu. How many children have to do with casting out? Those who beg on behalf of Tutu. Oh, get live, if I ask that you would ward off all death, ward off all sickness, ward off cases, controversy, ward off fights, litigation, losses, and our fights from us. Bring forth to us long life, good spouse, good children, longevity, prosperity, victory over adversity, peace of mind, joy, healing, and all the good things of life. Oh, good Lord. Rumla said it's time to sleep. I echoed it's time to sleep. When the day dawned, I met a Rumla in the 16th room, where he covered his head with a flowing gown full of lights. He was wearing a dress full of bloodstains. He was snoring heavily. They told that a delegate from his disciple arrived. Rumla thought about what the delegate had brought. They told him they brought 2 rats swift and 2 fish from swimming, 2 birds swift in flight, and 2 goats with big livers. Rumla said that's not enough to wake him up. I admit my ignorance, please educate me. Motuna Karaba, I hide myself in your bosom and survive. Motuna Karaba. The dog carrying masqueraded beasts, the Akbar drum repeatedly. The dog carrying masqueraded beasts, the Akbar drum repeatedly to perform rituals because of children. You are the leaders, we are the followers. Leaders are the ones who show the followers wisdom. Rumla told them to get alligator pepper, to get cola nut, to get bitter cola nut, to get alcohol. The Akapo got the alligator pepper, he got the cola nut, he got the bitter cola nut, and he got the alcohol. That is right, now he is fully awake. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me through eyes of compassion. It is with eyes of compassion that the heavenly stars usually look at the stars below. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me through eyes which help one to secure great wealth. There's such good eyes that the heavenly stars usually look at the stars below. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me with your eyes which help one to secure a good spouse. There's such good eyes that my spouse should usually look at me with. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me with your eyes which help one to bear many children. There's such good eyes a child should use in looking at a well-decorated plate. Before long, not too far, join us in the midst of all Iran. Ifa, we call on you. We ask that you will continue to ward off all the ajogun from us and bring forth to us all the great things of life. Oshetra. Akeke and Bagisa, the actual sharply against the tree, Cassify for Rumla when he used to receive Iba and not share from all of them. You can wealth to be wealthy, surely be wealthy. Akeke and Bagisa, in the mouth of an owl, Saziba and share, in the mouth of an owl. If no treasure have joy, surely have joy. Akeke and Bagisa, in the mouth of an owl, Saziba and share, in the mouth of an owl. If no treasure have peace, surely have peace. Akeke and Bagisa, in the mouth of an owl, Saziba and share, in the mouth of an owl. If no treasure have healing, you should surely have healing. Akeke and Bagisa, in the mouth of an owl, Saziba and in the mouth of an owl. Tossing, maybe so surely shall it be. Oshetra. Tiny other feet of Tubu. The son of a chameleon is not big enough to use his headgear. Had it been enough to use his headgear, I would have taken it home and done my hair with it. These three files declarations to Allah. I'm going on spiritual mission to Jabal. I'm calling lotus and paying money. I'm calling the sorcerer and make it rich. I'm calling Oshearilla. Oshearilla to the God. If I will call on you. Àṣẹ òrìṣà lẹ́nu mi o, àṣẹ òrìṣà lẹ́nu mi. Gbogbo tí mo bá màmá wí o, ìran mo lè ó bà. Ifá ọba o, àṣẹ òrìṣà lẹ́nu mi. Bí mo dúró, tí mo súré. Bí mo bẹ̀rẹ̀, tí mo súré. Bí mo kúnlẹ̀, tí mo súré. At this time, let us go to our Oris. Our Oris are good. Orieni larure yeni o, Orieni larure yeni. Mojulo mi ufawa mori, Orieni larure yeni. Orechazu, Ifá ọba Ọlọ́run àti Bàṣáájú. Ifá ọba Ọlọ́run ó ṣe àrùdìgbà Ifá ti bọ́. All of the mind and divinity. For our cases, conscious for our fights, litigation, losses, and our fights from us. Bring forth to us life. Give us a spouse, give us good children, give us peace of mind, give us joy, give us success, give us victory over adversity, peace of mind, heal us, If I will call on you. Emma coming me now. Emma coming me now. Emma coming me now. Deloku. Tamule. Tori Ifa alone me. Ebola timpani. Eni banami. Ahon ati Ifa lelejo. Ifa we ask it this time that you would move my ego out of the way so we can hear a word of Ifa. So we can hear filtered Ifa from you. Ifa support us as members of Idin Kai Ifa Temple. Guide us, direct us, protect us, and keep us safe. Ashe, Abor, Aboye, Aboshishe, Abo. So thank you all so much for tapping in with us. This is a local of Idin Kai Ifa Temple. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. And today's message is going to be a very interesting one, as they all are. Today's message is on the topic of the arrogance of ignorance. The arrogance of ignorance. So when we think about this concept of ignorance and arrogance and those two things kind of coming together, I want us to imagine times that we ourselves might have been arrogant or ignorant or even ignored the special messages of Ifa. So with that, let us begin. So what do I mean when I say the arrogance of ignorance? Let's see. Well, when we speak of this concept of the arrogance of ignorance, the thing I think about is that there's so many times, there are so many folks, maybe not the folks that I'm talking to, but there are so many times that we ourselves might think that we know better. We might think that we might know better than what Ifa says. We might know better than Ifa. Has Ifa ever told you something that at the very moment you couldn't believe, you couldn't comprehend at the initial stage, to the point where the information was so difficult to comprehend that you might have rejected it? Or better yet, have you ever known anyone who thought that they might know better and believe that they have a better way to handle things than Ifa? They might have come to Ifa for guidance and got some information about the person that they thought that they wanted to marry, and nah, Ifa's got to be wrong about that. I think I know better. Or there's a thing that they wanted in life, a house that they wanted to put a bid on. Ifa said, no, not that house. There's a better one for you. And they said, I think that I know better. Do we know anyone? Do we know anyone that might be? So this is what we're talking about today. Is those times, those knew better than what Ifa was saying at that moment in time. When we think about this, I always want to analyze how Ifa wisdom works. So the nature of Ifa wisdom is in its connection with not only space, but time, and also character and circumstances. The deep wisdom of Ifa oftentimes pivots on two axioms, and those axioms are: one, the fact that history oftentimes repeats itself. The second axiom is that of the principle of substitution. And when we think about this idea of the principle of substitution, what do we mean when we say that history repeats itself? What do we mean when we say that it works on the principle of substitution? Ifa works on this aspect of looking at history as kind of like a repository of information. And as things happen, cycles return and repeat themselves. History repeats itself. If 20,000 years ago, someone solved a problem by utilizing these particular methods, then if you've got the same problem in 2022 and you got the same Odoo, you can handle the same problem the same way that it was solved 20,000 years ago. Next is the principle of substitution. If there's a challenge that could come to you, many times what we might use is aspects of animal, plant, earth to ensure that the problem does not come to you, but it avoids you. We substitute that thing for you. So when we investigate this wisdom of Ifa, we understand that we too have to investigate and invest in our destiny through a process of divination and abo. And the implications play out throughout time and space. So what we think we know at any moment in time may not necessarily connect with reality. I'll repeat that. What we think we know at any material moment in time may not necessarily connect with reality. So when we think we know something, that reality in and of itself might change. The reality that we think that we are perceiving at any moment in time might transform itself at any given moment in time. And what we ultimately achieve is destiny. So, in so many ways, Ifa makes us think while showing us how much we don't know. This is, in essence, the arrogance of an individual who might be ignorant. That is what we mean when we speak of this idea of the arrogance of ignorance. Ifa is saying on so many levels that this level of ignorance is in essence what keeps us from achieving greatness. So let's analyze this on a deeper level. Let's look at what Ifa has to say. This was the Ifa cast for Abi Abba, the wife of Osain. And this also cast Ifa for Osain when he was asked to offer Ebo for Abiaba, his wife, for slave delivery, lest she die a cheap and preventable death. Osain refused to comply, claiming that charms are enough to prevent death. Osain said, Orumila, you can try your worst. Abiaba gave birth to a bouncing baby yesterday night. You can try your worst. Eshu responded later. Osain, you can try your worst. Abiaba died yesterday night. You can try your worst. This is such a powerful and interesting Ifa verse. One of the main reasons is because Osain had a wife, Abiaba, and when she was pregnant, He was casting Ifa and doing all the necessary things that he needed to do to ensure that his wife would have safe delivery. Ifa basically said, you need to offer a bow to prevent death in the process of delivery. And Osine, being who Osine relies mainly on herbal remedies. He relies mainly on spiritual aspects associate or preternatural force, I will say. He relies mainly on those things. He said that his charms, his medicines were enough to support him, and they were enough to prevent his wife and his child from dying in delivery. And it wasn't until after the baby was born, the baby didn't die. Instead, it was his wife who died. All because he could have offered a bow, but he knew better than what Ifa had to say. And in that arrogance, he stood toe to toe with Ifa wisdom and decided that he knew more than what Ifa had to offer. This, in essence, is that arrogance. This, in essence, is that ignorance. When we see there's a problem that we can prevent, yet we decide not to invest in what Ifa has to say. So many times people might come to Ifa and they think that they just want to get their idea, their concept of reality. They just want to get that confirmed. So they come to Ifa with a preconceived notion that they will, in essence, resolve the issue themselves, and they think, you know what, Ifa is just gonna give me, what I already know. So they come, they cast Ifa, already in themselves, in their own mind, knowing what they think the truth is. And Ifa, on so many times, convinces them otherwise. Let's look at another verse of Ifa. This is from the Odu Idi Meji. Ifa says, only one strand of string was what was used to suspend the earth. This was the Ifa cast for Onikiola when looking for an ideal husband. She was advised to offer a bow, but she refused to comply. She then gave birth to Ejiogbe in Otun town, and Oyekumeji for them in Apa town, and Iworimeji for them in Igodo town, and Idimeji for them in Eju town. Offering a bow is very supportive. To give Eru to Eshu is very rewarding. Had Oniki Ola known this before it was too late, she would have spent her money offering a bow for her life to be more fruitful. So this is the story of a woman by the name of Onikiola. And Onikiola was fairly attractive, and she wanted to go to Ifa for Ifa consultation to see what would be the case. How would things pan out in relationship? Would she be able to find a good husband? Would she be able to find a stable relationship, a good spouse, all of these things? So what happened? Onikiola goes forward, and as she moves forward into the dating world, she gets this advice from Ifa. Ifa says, please offer a bow. Without offering proper a bow, what will happen is you will have 4 children in 4 different places by 4 different fathers. What we would like is for you to have all 4 of these children in one family. because having them in four different places will create distress. The Awol told her also that the other issue here is your attitude, because your attitude is such that you will be able to get into a relationship, but you will not be able to sustain a relationship unless you change the way you think and you change the way that you act. Oniki Ola took what the Babalao said with a grain of salt, and it went in one ear and went out the other. And what she did from there was she conferred with different family members, and she felt, you know what, this Babalao is trying to take my money. He's trying to bilk me. He's trying to swindle me. Why would I need to offer an ebo with a goat in the event of me avoiding these negative things? I'm a good person and I have it in mind that I can solve this myself. The Babalao doesn't know anything about me. Ifa doesn't know anything about me. So what she does is she then does not offer any abo. She avoids offering a bow altogether. And when she does this, she moves into a different realm. And that realm is the realm of arrogance, the realm of ignorance. She moves in and she finds a good spouse and moves in with him. And as she finds this man, they have a wonderful relationship for the early stages. She marries and she gives birth to Ejioge in the town of Otun. And when this happens, things kind of turn and transform. The negative attitude that Ifa had spoken to her about was not changed. She became a little bit demanding and at certain moments disrespectful. And the family that she had moved into became angry with her and downright aggressive towards her. And in that moment, the family chased her out of the household, saying that it was her negative attitude. After that divorce, she found another spouse in Apatown. She married that spouse and then gave birth to Oyekumeji. And as she gave birth to Oyekumeji in Apatown, things were good for the initial stage. And then all of a sudden, everything left. It was her attitude. Again, she was very demanding about finances. She was very demanding about what she wanted, about how she was going to be treated in that house. She wasn't going to do anything, wasn't going to work, wasn't going to contribute to anything associated with the household. And what happened? They became angry, and they too chased or made Onikiola to leave that household. Then Onikiola found another relationship in Igodo town. And when she found this next relationship, she felt like, okay, all of that other stuff, that was them. That was their negative attitude. It wasn't me. She found the spouse in Igodo town. They married. She gave birth to Iwori Meji there. When she gave birth to Iwori Meji, soon after, that attitude, that negative energy crept up, that argumentative aspect crept up. And when it crept up, the same thing occurred. The family felt like, my goodness, Onikiola is such a challenge to deal with. She divorced that spouse and then went to Edutown and found another spouse and married him and then gave birth to Odimeji. When she gave birth to Odimeji, shortly thereafter, the same thing occurred. After all of these years, she then thought, man, what happened? What could I have done differently? What made each of these situations so negative? And she continued to think. And she remembered that years ago, before she entered into the dating market, she had cast Ifa. And she began to ruminate over the messages that the Babalao gave her. And Ifa basically told her that she would have 4 children. And if she didn't change her attitude, if she could only offer a bow, she would have 4 children in the same household as opposed to 4 children in 4 different households. And she began to cry, realizing that not only was it the stubbornness of not offering a bow, not following the advice, but also that had a reflection on the attitude that she had associated with working with her spouses, and spouses' families. Ifa is saying, be humble. Ifa is saying, the world is different from what you might think it is. Instead of trying to change the world to fit you, why not transform yourself so that you will be more suitable for this world? Onikiola avoided the advice, and in that, she became arrogant in her ignorance. In the Odu Ifa Ogbe Rosun, Ifa says very clearly, cockroaches are insects which blow air into each other's ears. The millipede is the animal that walks alone on the road. This was Ifa's message for doubting Olofin, who was advised to offer a bow with his coverlet in order to avert untimely death. He offered the abo, but he refused to respect Ifa's warning. Orin Sin Sin Kashin Olofin's guard. Orin Sin Sin Kashin, another guard of Olofin, the expert whose shot never misses its target. Olofin's guard, Ori Tan Oyi, Olofin's guard. Had Olofin known the implication, he would have offered the prescribed ebo. Travelers to Ipo and Ofa town, let those warned to offer ebo please do so. So this is the story of the Olofin. And as he was the great king of his town, Olofin, he became troubled and he began to have these terrible dreams. And in the dreams, he would be seeing death. He would see himself being exterminated, stabbed, spears, and shot by arrows, and he would wake in a cold sweat. He felt like death was looming. He felt like his enemies were all around him. So Olofin then began to say, you know what I'll do is I will make sure that I have all of my warriors, all my guards on high alert. And as he put all of his guards on high alert that night, he went to sleep and had another dream, the same kind of dream, and it was even more intense. So as he had this dream, he decided, you know what, I'm going to cast Ifa. So Olofin went and he cast Ifa. The Babalao said, look, death is indeed looming around you. Illness and tragedy is indeed looming all around you. What you need to do, in essence, is offer both. And for the next 17 days, you don't need to be leaving outside of your home. You don't need to be leaving in the dead of night. So, what you should do is stay home, don't go out at night, and offer a bow. So, Olofin did offer the abo. He offered the abo, and as he offered the abo, he then told his warriors, all right, I need you to be on high alert at all times. If you hear anything in the distance, don't ask any questions. Shoot first, ask questions later. So he offered his abo, and that night he went to bed. He began to talk with the queen. And the queen was saying, you know what? Those people that came and offered a bow for you, they're all charlatans. Those are all, they're fake. They're fake babalaos. All they did was take your money. They took your money, and then what they did was uh they buried that goat somewhere in the backyard. They're swindlers. So they began this discussion about, wow, man, these babalaos, they took my money and just did some offbeat ritual. She was like, yeah, that's what they had to have done. It was of no use. I'll tell you what they did, she says. I bet you they just buried the animal in a hole. They probably just did it. So she said, when they usually offer a bow, they slaughter the animal. I bet you they didn't even slaughter this animal. You should go check. So she tells the king, go check, go look, go see. See if they did what they said that they would do. So the king followed the advice of his wife. He decided, you know what, it's late. I won't carry a lantern. So I'll just go out in the dead of night. I'm not going to carry a lantern because if I carry a lantern, what might happen is I'll disturb people who are asleep in the palace. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to creep out and I want to see exactly what these fake, charlatan, no good doing, fake babalaos did. So then he goes, he creeps out, and he reaches the Eshu shrine, and he sees the rope that the goat was tied to. And then he kind of digs in the ground with his hands, digs and digs and digs and digs, and then he finds the head of the goat, and he begins to pull the rope. And interestingly enough, the Babalaos had just finished offering that abo. He pulls and pulls, and he pulls the goat up out of the ground alive. And the goat begins to bleat, bah, 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 yelling crazily. And the guards, all they heard was the sound of the goat. And one guard's arrow was sure. And he fired in the direction of where he heard the sound. And the arrow hit the king and went in through his throat and went out through the back of his head, killing him instantly. All because he thought he knew better than what Ifa said. It is analogous to receiving good advice, but then deciding, you know what, I'm not going to listen to any good advice. I'm not going to listen to advice at all. I've heard I've heard that uh, never give advice because a wise person doesn't need it and a fool won't take it. Don't give any advice. When we think about a wise person won't take it, won't need it, and a fool won't take it. Wise person won't need it and a fool won't take it. When we think about that, both the quote unquote wise person and the fool are one and the same. Why is this? Why is it? Why must individuals at times be arrogant in their ignorance? Walk boldly forward after inquiring of Ifa without even listening, without even following what was said. Oftentimes, it is best to follow the advice and offer ebo. That becomes the challenge sometimes. Have you ever been in a situation, as we said at the beginning, a situation where Ifa gave you some advice that you found to be ridiculous, strange, something that made absolutely no sense to you and your mind at the moment? Have you ever been in such a situation? Have you been a vegan and Ifa says, let us eat this goat that we have sacrificed? And you were like, no, that I'm a vegan. Has that ever happened to you? Because you know better than Ifa in which you are consulting. That then becomes very interesting. When we think of this, I want to say, let us follow Ifa with complete devotion, complete humility. And once you go to Ifa, one thing that we should remember is don't lean on your own understanding. Don't lean on your own perspective of what you think Ifa says. And within reason, and what I say within reason, go to a qualified Babalao, Ianifa, someone that you know has been trained, someone that you know that you can follow up with their elders, someone who has good ethic, someone who follows that code. Go to someone you know who has studied, someone you know who's tried and true and who has studied Ifa. Don't go to someone who has merely just gotten off the mat of initiation. Go to someone who knows what Ifa is saying. And you'll know. And once you find that individual, once you find what Ifa is saying for real, follow that. In the Odu Ifa Idiatago, Odi on the right, Otura on the left, Ifa says, Orumila declares that it is time to rest. I responded that it is time to sleep on top of someone. Ifa says that those who depend, who are those who are dependable enough for one to sleep upon? I responded that it is my parents. They are dependable enough to sleep upon. I never knew that my parents were not worthy enough to sleep upon. Arumla declares that it is time to rest. I responded that it is time to sleep on top of someone. Ifa says, who is dependable enough for you to sleep upon? I responded that my spouse. My spouse is dependable enough for me to sleep upon. I never knew that my spouse was not worthy enough for me to sleep upon at all. Arumla declares that it is time to sleep. I responded that it is time to sleep on top of someone. Ifa says that who is dependable enough for you to sleep upon? I responded that it is my children. They are worthy enough for me to sleep upon. I never knew that my children were not worthy enough or dependable enough for me to sleep upon. I now declare my ignorance of who is dependable enough to sleep upon. If you program me to be wealthy, forever, I will continue to sleep upon you. If you program me to be blessed with good children, forever, I will continue to sleep upon you. If you program me to be blessed with all the good things in life, forever, I will sleep upon you. This so powerful Ifa verse. Ifa says so the key clincher to this Ifa, after one realizes that the people in our lives, it's not that they're bad, it's just that they are not Olodumare. They are not Ifa. They are not the infinite. Their love is good and they're reliable people for the most part, but sometimes folks let us down. That is the nature of people. They will let us down. Ifa, when in this verse, Ifa says, who is worthy enough for us to sleep upon? I say, this person is worthy for me to sleep upon. When it says sleep upon, that means rely on. For me to rest assured on. That's what Ifa is saying. Who is worthy enough for me to rest upon, for me to be able to rest assured that what I ask them to do, they're going to do. What I need at the moment, they're going to have my back. If I ain't got it, they're going to have it and they're going to have me. That is what Ifa is saying. And Ifa says that none of these people, none of these human beings, none of this human conception is worthy or dependable enough for us to rest assured on. Who then is worthy enough for us to rest assured on? And Olodumare or Ifa basically says that it is Ifa. Ifa is worthy enough for us to sleep upon. But so key in this Ifa verse is that I declare my ignorance. So many times we have to declare our ignorance. So many times it is valuable, it is important for us to say, you know what, I don't know. Some Babalaos, some ENE5s, they might be like, you might not ever hear them say, you know what, I need to go and check with my elders on this. When you hear that, say Ashe. That's important because you want the best, most rich information you can. But so often, individuals might say, I know, when they really don't. But it is so beautiful, such a powerful thing to admit you don't know. it's so important for an awo to say, I admit my ignorance. Because when you don't know, then what does that do? That makes it possible for you to eventually know, for you to eventually learn. And this is what many of us here in the diaspora oftentimes can be victims of. And also, our walls in on the continent can be victims of this. And also, many of us who are practitioners can be victims of this. But the deep level is knowing. We can only know if we admit we don't. Such a key portion in studying Ifa with great, great elders is not to come to those elders with, you know what, I know this. I remember there's been times of myself and working with some of Omoawos under me. And I'll be working with them and teaching them different aspects of what I learned from my Oluo in terms of Eboriru. I remember one time, one Omoawo, he told me, you know what? I already know Eboriru. Okay, Ashe. And then I start going through the motions, the process of it, and then we finish. And then I ask, okay, Baba, what did you learn? Oh, I already knew all that. I just didn't know that one part where you put the animals in this particular separate dish for this particular reason, and da da. I know everything else though. You didn't know. You didn't know. Imagine if any of us, if I'm studying with Chief Popola and he's going over and reviewing some things that I thought I already knew. I'm like, forget all that. I already know this. And then all of a sudden he throws a little bit, does something slightly different from what I remember. It's like, whoa, that's deep. I didn't know that. It's so powerful when you don't know, when you admit your ignorance. When you admit your ignorance, it gives you the opportunity to eventually come into the light. So when we admit that ignorance, we have an opportunity. And the arrogance of being ignorant is the thing that prevents us from eventually knowing. So it's important for us to eventually know. So, what I ask for many of us today, for all of us as we hear this Ifa sermon, if what we can do is really try to get a next level perspective on things. And that next level perspective is a perspective of humility. That perspective is a perspective of being okay with not knowing. Because once we have the information, then we will know. And one of the additional things is a perspective of trusting and trusting in what Ifa says. When we trust in what Ifa is saying, when we trust in what God is saying, there's so many solutions. When we look at the divine possibilities, there's so many possibilities for us when we open up to those possibilities. And oftentimes those things that are hidden from us are those things we're ignorant to. We don't want to live in a world of unknown unknowns. We want to live in a world of at least known unknowns. What that means is I don't know, but I know that there is a solution. You know, as I end, there's so many folks at different points in time who've come to Castify regarding like solutions around COVID and solutions around different diseases and issues. And in this world will convince you otherwise. America will convince you that there is no solution to the challenges of the world at this time. But I'm a living witness that there is a solution, that there are solutions, oftentimes that we don't even know about. But guess what? Ifa knows. And the solution might sound so outlandish that in our right mind, we are wrong. So, as I end, let's get out of our right mind and get into our destiny, our birthright mind, our destiny mind, because all of us are destined for greatness. Ashe, Abora boy. All right, I thank you all so much for tapping in with us today. Forgive us, those of you on Facebook and YouTube. I heard that there are some challenges in the broadcast. Hopefully, the Instagram broadcast came through really good. So, what we'll do is we'll probably um, use that as our primary broadcast today, and we'll figure out the challenges that is bringing problems on this other platform. But yes, also with that, I want to let y'all know, those of you who want to be involved, we cast our Itadogun, the Osheifa before last. The Odu was Ogbeyonu. So all of those messages are on the website if you want. And also we have a Koshe that will be coming because there's messages around particularly cleaning up, cleanliness, because there's an aspect of this Odu that talks about the potential of respiratory issues as a result of not cleaning up. And excuse me, when we get these little signs in Ifa, we need to follow that because Ifa is letting us know, we still are not out of the woods in terms of this COVID situation. It's still very serious. And we need to utilize the work, we need to utilize the tradition as a means to successfully negotiate through these challenging times. Also, along with that, so if you want to participate in Tadawun, please go to the Idinkai Ifa Temple website. You can see that on the Instagram page and also underneath. Also, those of you who want to learn more about Ifa, every Friday night we have our Ifa class. We call it the Friday Night Ifa class. This month is Black History Month, as every month, every year, every month should be True History Month, which I consider Black History Month. But so this month we're going to be focusing particularly on some interesting topics for strengthening, our people at this time. So for the next 4 weeks, week one, the first Friday of this month, we focused on how do we use Ifa to heal the Black family in particular, and families in general. So we talked about that this last Friday. This coming Friday, the topic at hand is going to be decolonizing the mind as we practice African traditions. So as we practice these African traditions, many of us come in with cultural baggage. Living in America, we come with tons of baggage. and many of us are coming from Judeo-Christian traditions that kind of taint our conception of the potential of what God is and what Ifa represents. So we want to decolonize our minds. And also with that, we're going to talk about some excerpts of the book 2000 Seasons by Aikwe Arma. So those of you who've heard of that book, tap in with us. Also, if you are interested, what I will do is I have excerpts of the book that we're going to be discussing during our talk. And if you're serious, let us know. And what we'll do is I will send out, I'll send you an excerpt of the book so that you'll be prepared for Friday's class. Also, week 3, we're going to be talking about Holy Ghost. And the Holy Ghost that we're talking about is the one that is identified in so many of our African traditions. Particularly, we'll talk about the form and function of hoodoo as influenced by Ifa. And we're going to analyze that from the perspective of the television show. Many of you who might know about it, it's called Lovecraft Country. So we'll be analyzing some of the video of episode 3, which is called Holy Ghost. So if you want, before you tap into us in week 3, you can take a look at that. We'll also be showing excerpts of it in the class. Also, week 4 is going to be really powerful because I think that on so many levels, the film Sankofa, man, Sankofa has so much relevance to what we're doing today. And I want us to re-envision the concept of Sankofa and re-envisioning the film as we are New World diasporic practitioners of Ifa and African tradition. So those of you who are interested, the film Sankofa is on Netflix. It's also on, they'll be showing Sankofa for, I believe, the whole month of February. So if you have not seen Sankofa, check it out. Watch that film. We're going to be discussing it on the 4th Friday of this month. If you haven't seen Lovecraft Country, if you're into this kind of thing of African spirituality, please take a look at Lovecraft Country. And also, lastly, if you have not read excerpts of the piece 2000 Seasons by Aikwe Arma, I endorse it. It is a must read if we're going to really re-envision how we want to apply Ifa in as an African futurist perspective. So I think these are such powerful things. So if you're interested, hit me up. And just tap in with us. It's going to be a great month of information and learning that we're going to be doing for this month. So as we end, also another thing is during this month, we are going to be doing Makings of Men. So I'll be putting up the flyer for Makings of Men next week. So those of you who are interested, tap in with us. We're doing some big things. Thank you again. All right, so before we end, I wanted to pray. Olodumare, we have analyzed the arrogance of ignorance and help us to embrace our ignorance in order to be empowered. Please continue to support us as we traverse through these challenging times so that we can negotiate through the landmines and the pitfalls that we don't see, and help us to truly see through the illusions so that we can lean not to our own comprehension and understanding, but embrace yours. Help us to see ourselves the way you see us, Almighty God. Help us to see us the way you see us. And with that, I pray to see you the next time. We'll be tapping in again with Ilea Juba Temple Service on the 3rd week of February. And we look forward to seeing you then. Aboro, Aboy, Aboshishe, Aboto. Thank you all again. It was such a good thing to see many of you today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Thank y'all.